Hello, I'm Mark, and this is a review of the indie game Make Our Own Heaven by Razer. Overview. In Make Your Own Heaven, you play scientific experiments with divine powers that have escaped their laboratory prisons aboard a vast space station. It's a game strongly inspired by punk themes, so the game is more about fighting a system of oppression than it is about fighting individual bad guys or their schemes. Despite the setting of isolation, desperation, and authoritarian control, Make Our Own Heaven is a hopeful punk setting focusing on stories of growth of small communities and resisting the bleak horror of corporate control. The form of the game. The game is a 29-page, full-colour game in a pamphlet or zine form, though I believe designed mostly for PDF readers. I purchased this as a physical copy at a convention and even managed to speak to Razer, the designer at the convention, who is a wonderful person and passionate about RPGs. The book is organised then into two sections. The first is a history of New Heaven and details the setting. The second is how to play and goes through the rules with many setting details interspersed. Both the sections are led with beautiful, evocative art pieces, and there is an amazing centrepiece of angelic lovers. Throughout the book are functional and pleasing box text sections to bring attention to either mechanics or setting details. The book is well edited, with a couple of spelling and spacing issues. On a read-through, the text is clear, evocative, and understandable, though it does change in its tone from the setting section, which is in third person, to the how to play section, where the designer's voice can be heard and the reader is addressed directly. There are font and colouring changes used to draw the reader's attention to keywords, concepts and ideas, which is always a helpful concept. The pages are gloss and the text is overlaid over a subtle circuit breaker type diagram that does not in any way interfere with the text. The character sheets are more bare bones than the book. They look useful in play with an overview of the rules and the key abilities all available. No or very little referencing should be required in play, and I appreciate the 2 extra playbooks available for both the authority and the community respectively. Games like it. Make Our Own Heaven lies within the punk genre, so a game similar to it would be Cyberpunk 2020 or the more modern Cyberpunk Red. But in truth, this game is closest in theme to the unsung Cyber Generation, which was a kind of sequel to Cyberpunk 2020 about genetically modified young people fighting the power to make little communities. Unfortunately, that was forgotten in favour of the vastly more popular nihilistic Cyberpunk series, which was about burning bright and making a beautiful corpse. Compared to the gritty nihilism of Cyberpunk 2020's razors under the skin, Make Our Own Heaven is much more grounded and has a much more mature concept of punk. In this game, burning bright and burning out is a pointless, hopeless activity, and the game focuses more on the building and nurturing of a community to resist the authority rather than in any pointless act of violence. This game also moves into outright supernatural territory, with the characters able to manifest both subtle and obvious supernatural powers to achieve their goals, something that Cyberpunk characters cannot do. Mechanical design. Make Our Own Heaven is a D10 dice pool system, but this system is by far the least important part and least important mechanic of the game. It's introduced in the last 5 pages of the book after all of the other mechanics. Unlike many story games, the successful levels are broken into different categories. In this, it's miss, qualified success, and outstanding success. Like PBTA games, the game master or facilitator in the system does not roll dice. The events and narration are based off the player's dice rolls. And the most interesting parts of the mechanic here are not the normal skills of the character, which function to add dice to the dice pool, but the divine powers, which serve to overcome obstacles entirely without rolling dice. These are tasty little pieces of evocative text that each PC chooses at character creation, and are things like 7 glowing eyes that pierce the veil, or memories of angelic science. These divine power mechanics give the players just a little moment to be the most valued player or MVP, be cool and supernatural and strange enough that they really stand out in the setting as different. Probably the most interesting part of those abilities, both in their earthly skill and in their divine powers, is their refresh. To put this into context, characters have a limited pool of points to be able to use their skills and powers, which only refresh when the characters do certain actions in the game. This refresh mechanic means that the players are forced, if they want to regain their abilities, to perform certain activities. These are split between earthly skills and divine powers, so negotiating a scene with the GM where your character indulges in earthly delights or helps their family forces the game story away from the standard fight the power narrative and into scenes about character and community. The most important part of this is community building. This both refreshes the individual player character's dice rolls, allowing them to act further and assist PCs in other ways. With this building of community as a goal, the PCs and their advancement, both in terms of power and wider reach, is a deeper, more mature look at the growth as a person than most RPGs have. Discussion. Make Our Own Heaven is a good game. It packs a lot into 29 pages, and I could see myself running a short campaign, though I suspect I'd struggle to run this as a one-shot or a long campaign. What is good is the focus on community growth and protection of the community rather than violence as the answer. While violence is inherent to the setting, it's not, for the most part, rewarded. Even the refresh of things like hurt the authority does not mean violence against cops or being a terrorist. I also enjoy the refresh mechanic and the nature of how divine powers can be used for players to be the MVP for a scene. Of particular note is the gameplay loop between fighting the power as it comes to get you and the mechanical imperative to return to the community to regain your strength. PCs in this game cannot be lone wolves with sniper rifles unless they want to find themselves weak, captured, or dead, and this suits the punk theme entirely. I do have some minor criticisms around community creation, the role of the facilitator, the fading awe of divine powers, and a little pet peeve about character sheets. First, the community creation section is a relatively small part of the book, with only a little over 1 page of text, and I feel another page or two here really would have made the community aspect thrive, especially if it was worked into the gameplay loop in some form, just a little bit more, or perhaps given a little bit more fleshing out for players to engage with. When creating it, there are a number of sample questions to ask at the table, though the game does indicate you can ask as many or as few as you like. It requires the players here to generate quite a lot of details around location, institution, allies, friends and family before the game has even begun. I feel coming into this game without having read or understood the setting would require a lot of time spent at the table going over these details with the game master teaching and talking about these details prior to play. And for players unused to storytelling or world-building games, I don't believe this would be a good introduction to the game. I also wonder if the community sheet may stay a bit too static through the game and not be perhaps the working document to which it is intended. As a story-focused game, a session of Make Your Own Heaven is highly dependent on the GM to take the story elements presented and weave them together into something cool. While this is a criticism levelled against any story game, I could see this game being an absolute beautiful beast of a game when in the hands of a skilled GM who uses and fills out the details taken both from that community creation part and leads given from the players into telling a personalised story of growth, community and resistance. I could see those sheets being filled out, between the authority and community sheet being filled out, and I could see this PC spending more time working in their community, interacting with their community members than they do dodging police shakedowns or fighting back against special forces units that are hunting them down. Unfortunately, I think this gameplay loop and its effects are not spelled out directly to the GM. And while the designer is clear with his goals, I'm not sure enough onboarding has been done for less experienced GMs to be able to run this game in perhaps the way that it is intended. As a personal thought, I don't know if this game is for emotionally immature people. I can certainly imagine my younger teen or 20-something self, fresh out of playing something like Cyberpunk 2020, seeing this game, thinking that it's really cool, and then imagining that I could make my emotionally dead street samurai who oils his guns in the corner when he's not killing people into an angel of some sort, into one of the main characters of this game. I can also imagine looking at these rules and imagining, wait, I have to go and talk to my family to be able to get my powers back. I just want to go and make my divine weapon to be more divine-y and more weapon-y and be able to kill more people with it. And so if that was the mindset that I was in at that time, I'm not sure that it's necessarily a game for people who are in that mindset now. But I speak to a lot of teens and young adults nowadays, and they're a whole lot more emotionally mature than I was and perhaps am. So what do I know? I also do wonder about the fading awe of divine powers. With the characters accessing very few powers to begin the game, but having 7 uses of those powers before needing a refresh, I can see some players using these powers repeatedly and constantly in any given scene, pushing for those powers to be useful in situations that perhaps are not their desired goal. These divine powers, by their repeated use, become less awesome, less majestic than what I believe is intended. I also feel the refresh aspects could be spammed by players in a less than genuine attempt to engage in the story by saying things like, "Oh, I just work in the soup kitchen today. Do I get all my godly powers back?" Finally, I do have a pet peeve, which is the main book referencing character sheets in how to make the character, but not having the information in the book that is on the character sheets. It is just a bit of an irritation for me, and I'd like the main book to be complete and not require the reference material of the sheet to understand completely. Probably less of an issue for those with PDFs, but when I was reading the book, as I just had the physical copy and not the playbooks, I was reading that and couldn't understand what was happening. Overall, Make Your Own Heaven is a great game, and I suggest it to anyone who loves short, evocative campaigns, and especially for those groups who are interested in telling tales about community, growth, and resistance. If you want to be a hunted angelic super being, this game is for you.